Hi everyone, and welcome back to Project No Buy. Today's video is going to be the June recap. If you've seen my previous two videos or my community posts, you might already know I had a back injury in early June, and it really threw things off. It threw the no buy off. It threw a lot of my personal life off. Luckily, I was able to play the couple of concerts that I was scheduled to play for my regular work as a musician, so that's good. But I suffered in doing so, and I say that kind of facetiously. I don't want to minimize the suffering of actual people elsewhere in the world who are going through a lot worse right now. I'm not trying to be totally ignorant of things like that. I don't want to kind of just telegraph how privileged I am, although in some ways I can't avoid doing so, because in dealing with this mercifully temporary disability, I am reminded, of course, that some people live with this every day of their lives, or live with kind of other restrictions, other disabilities, other adversities. And so I'm grateful that, for me at least, it's hopefully a temporary thing. I'm still dealing with a little bit of the back issues, but hopefully temporary. Hopefully it will improve and go back to normal, and or hopefully I will be nudged into taking better care of myself so that I don't encounter this kind of thing again, because some of it is due to my own neglect and not refusal to exercise, but reluctance to get that habit started. And I really need to invest more, whether it's time, money, energy, all of the above, into getting that habit underway for my own health. Okay, so to get right into the updates of June, you might have already seen this as well, but I did choose to dissolve my memberships community for multiple reasons. So I was feeling a little bit weird about how the memberships aspect of this channel requires a purchase, and I have had mixed feelings about that from the very beginning, but I also wanted a way to telegraph the content that was coming. And it was a little bit clunky to think about maybe doing a post of the topics that were coming up before they were actually filmed and edited and done, because a lot of times my titles and thumbnails come after the editing. What the actual topic of the video is comes after the fact. I do have my journal, right? But I'm not a big scripting kind of creator. A lot of this is off the cuff. And so the main theses of my videos oftentimes comes later, and so it's hard for me to telegraph without filming, editing, posting, and then kind of having that available, which the memberships was a way to be able to do that. Not to try to entice people to join, but more to kind of telegraph where the journey was going next. And so, a lot of these videos tend to be connected as well. So something I talk about now may be referenced a few videos down the line, because that's kind of how the progress goes, right? Like you learn this thing and then it opens your eyes here and then you refer back. Anyway, so that's why I liked the idea of the memberships. It also enabled me to see the comments from members, give a filter or whatever to prioritize that. So for anybody who really wanted to engage in that dialogue, it was a way to have that channel. But I do think that, at least for now, I'm going to kind of pivot back the personal arena of this journey, this channel, both because I need to do that for myself in order to get back on track, but also because I think the nature of the community here is more supportive that way, when less kind of, I don't want to say hot takes, but I mean, I'm of two minds, right? And both things are likely to happen. So this is maybe kind of a pointless conversation to anybody here who's waiting for the list of things that I bought to fail my no buy. You can timestamp that down below. But I think probably two things are going to happen. I'm going to focus much more on the personal journey. I have a new why right now. I have a new reason for wanting to not buy things and to save money, which I'll get into later. I also do feel that without the deep exploration of why I do the things I do in terms of buying things, I am losing a little bit of, I don't want to say the purpose. It's definitely not my purpose, but my alignment is skewing a little bit. And I like the clarity that I feel, the curiosity, the continued growth that sharing in this way provides for me, or helps me find for myself. And so I will be leaning back into those kind of personal videos and topics in at least the next month, next couple of months, probably summer. And when I do a kind of more reactive video, I might conversely lean much more into the lack of nuance, the being a hater, this is where I see it from where I am now perspective, not to get views, but because spending so much time disclaiming it and trying to make sure that the viewer knows where I'm coming from is futile anyway, because anybody viewing those kinds of videos and having their own perception and opinion is going to bring that, and they carry it with them, and nothing that I do in terms of setup is going to help them understand where I'm coming from unless they've seen everything preceding in this journey. And so it's ultimately futile to say, okay, I'm not trying to hate on this person, I understand this, blah de blah. No, I'm gonna probably scrap all that if I do reactive content going forward, which is still valuable for me in its own way, because it really kind of contextualizes where I used to be in terms of a viewer of that kind of content, being influenced by it. And now where I am, having learned, having reached another level of thinking, not saying it's a higher level, but just a different level, and how I view it now, and what I tell myself, my internal monologue has changed. When I see the Shein haul or whatever, maybe 2 years ago I was thinking, that's a nice style of clothing, maybe I could thrift something like that. Now, today, I'm saying, I don't even need any clothing. This is a waste of my time to watch. And it's not that I'm going to make videos just showing TikToks and saying, waste of my time, next, waste of my time. That's obviously not productive content for anybody. But there are more narratives out in society that influence perceptions that might bear further unpacking. But I might drop some of the attempts at trying to have a nuanced conversation and not offend anybody, and just kind of take that hat off and just be a hater. Maybe not. I don't know. You can let me know if you have thoughts on that in the comments below. The reason that I'm kind of having this awakening, or this kind of reformulation of this channel, and maybe I should have started with this, because so far I'm sure this has all been fairly boring housekeeping and I've probably lost a lot of you already. But I read or listened to the book Doppelganger by Naomi Wolf.
This is hilarious because I just made the same mistake that this book is entirely about. The author is Naomi KLEIN, who gets mistaken for Naomi Wolf.
And it really, really opened my eyes and made sense of a lot of what I've experienced as an online content creator, or somebody with any kind of presence online. And basically that's phenomenon where if something can be misconstrued, somebody will do it. And it's not even from malicious intentions, right? It's just the experience that they bring to your content, or to what they're seeing, to what you're saying. Their lived experience is different than mine in this case, than yours, than anybody's. No two peoples are the same. And so no two people's perspectives are the same. But the same thing can be something that lands on both sides, or both extremes even, of a spectrum. So Doppelganger, for context, is a book about Naomi KLEIN being confused with Naomi Wolf. And to kind of put it in a overly generalized nutshell, Naomi KLEIN is more, I don't know what she would call herself, if she would say liberal or progressive or whatever it is. And Naomi Wolf is very conservative. Again, I don't know the right terms, what they feel comfortable calling themselves. Right-wing, I don't know, whatever. And so being confused, KLEIN for Wolf, KLEIN herself being confused for Naomi Wolf, was troubling. And there were some narratives that Naomi KLEIN and Naomi Wolf would seemingly agree with, but they often used them for totally different purposes, or to show totally different things. And Naomi KLEIN in her book Doppelganger really broke this down in a very elegant way, and she went deep with it. She goes deep in everything she writes, it seems like. I also have her book No Logo, which will hopefully be coming up later in this month on this channel. Again, another wealth of wisdom for anybody on a journey of not buying things. And I hope to get my hands on, whether it's borrowing at the library or finding a secondhand copy of The Shock Doctrine as well, which is a book it seems important enough to break a no-buy and find a thrifted copy of, in terms of making sense of capitalism and why we have this environment of hyper-consumerism in the first place. So anyway, I do recommend Doppelganger by Naomi KLEIN. It explains a lot about life, about online discourse, about how one idea can be so far on each extreme of a political spectrum, or on a what kind of person you are spectrum. It was something I was dabbling in myself when I was talking about the crunchy granola values, because that is a term I've seen and heard of being used both on extreme left and extreme right ends of a political societal spectrum. And I was not trying to convey either end of those in my reference to that term on the video. But I'm sure that there are some people out there, maybe not you, but maybe others, who then took that terminology and associated me as being affiliated with one side of these political parties. I know it happened for a fact when I mentioned Jordan Peterson, because there was outright discussion in the comments about how using Jordan Peterson as an example was like using JD Vance or something. And again, I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to move on. I think the comment that I'm thinking more about actually is how somebody said that I engage so thoughtfully in these political issues when talking about them from the lens of no-buy, the capitalism, the exploitation of workers, etc. But then when it comes to politics, I live under a rock. And so again, it wasn't my intention to use my reflections as a political platform or to create a political platform, at least not yet. And it's kind of, I know it's unavoidable, right? Like I see the discourse now, I see people discussing about how fashion is political and these things are political and you can't get away. Art is political, but it's just tricky to think about these aspects of it all the time when I know you can't be removed completely from the politics of it, but it's just tricky to navigate. And I don't think there's a right answer. I don't think there's a right or a wrong or, it's very tricky, very tricky. There are things I believe firmly in terms of right and wrong, but there are ways the political parties have of manipulating or using points, or again, just read Doppelganger, listen to Doppelganger, however you choose to consume it. And I feel like that will bring us closer in terms of, and again, maybe that's a huge presumption. Maybe none of you have this problem out there, but anyway, moving on. This was supposed to be a recap for June. I guess that was a large part of the recap of what I've consumed in June. Doppelganger was a transformational work in terms of my understanding of public discourse. It did also clarify that I am not necessarily a leader here in terms of Project No-Buy. I am a fellow community member, a fellow traveler, like I said last year. I'm going to go back to that in terms of my approach. I am not trying to lead anybody. I am just sharing a journey as a fellow traveler. And I guess it is with that energy that I will go into all the things that I bought in the month of June. So all of the fails, all of the not wins, opposite of wins, all the losses, all of the transgressions that I have committed. And you're not going to believe this first one, or maybe you will. Maybe you telegraphed it. But I bought another pair of those $500 jeans. And okay, they're still $420 with a discount. So whether the price is important to you or not, that's not for me to decide. But I have finally come back to what I believe is my stable body size, body weight, body shape. Maybe not if I start actually working out, which I am hoping to try to do to avoid any further back issues. But I do think that even working out, the things that change will not go too far away from where they are now and or be accommodated by the type of clothing that I like to wear now, with a little bit of room. So anyway, I experienced, again, more clothes getting tight in ways that I can't tolerate, and I shared this in my previous video of things I regret. And so I decided, again, with maybe the shock and horror and, maybe this is where you all leave, where you all unfollow and decide that I am a pariah of no-buys, which, yeah, I am. I'm not doing well. I explained that earlier in this video, right? I am off the wagon in a big way. I fell off and I'm going to get back on. Whether you believe me or not is kind of irrelevant. And I'm sorry for failing if you have viewed me as a leader. I am not. I'm just a person trying to improve my own habits. But anyway, in the discovery of clothing getting too small and body changing and wardrobe usage, as well as getting a new sense of stability through having the job that I have now turn full-time, and realizing, that is my dress code now for possibly the rest of my life, probably the rest of my life, and wearing those jeans, every other day, or as often as I could get away with to work, and really wishing that that was all I could wear, all I had to wear, that I had enough of those, that was all that I needed to wear, that and maybe the odd pair of sweatpants or other loose-fitting pants appropriate for the weather. I went ahead and I bought another pair, and it was a little bit of a scarcity-minded purchase because when I looked for them, so what kind of spurred this initially was realizing that my other pair of jeans by this brand was sadly too small. I wore them out a couple of times and it was uncomfortable. I couldn't sit down without feeling the pinch in the nether regions. And so I really wanted a replacement for those. And my wardrobe is dwindling to the extent that it's not that I technically need any clothes still, right? Like, I'm not totally delusional. This is where the justification begins, and where in 3 months' time I'll look back on this video and say, wow, she was justifying it. And, you know, it's impossible to say that I don't say this to justify, because that's exactly what I'm doing. But I'm not saying that it was the right thing to do, even though it is the thing that I did. So, of all the convoluted ways to come back. Anyway, so I wanted to replace those jeans, and I also had a simultaneous love for that ridiculous pair of jeans that I got for Christmas last year, or prior to Christmas. And so I, again, you know, I discussed this with my husband, and I've also had comments that I shouldn't discuss my shopping goals with him because he's clearly trying to manipulate me. So, you know, maybe some of you out there are of that mind as well, of that same mind as the commenter. I don't know, but he enabled me to buy them and is trying to get me to spend money so that he can control me, you know. Anyway, I bought them and don't have any current regrets. Now I have two pairs, you know, one lighter, one darker, and I can just rotate those. And I truly feel like if those were my only two pairs of pants, I would be okay with that. It's easy to sit here and say that now, and that's probably exactly what I said when I bought the one pair, you know, like, this is my one pair of pants and I'm never going to need to buy another, and no, I won't buy any more $400 jeans, you know, like, and I'm eating all those words now, and that's just how life is sometimes when you're just unstable and unhealthy and have shopping addictions and whatever people say about me online. And, you know, maybe some of it's true, maybe I just can't see it because I'm the one living it. What else did I buy? So I also, in noticing that I basically have one or two summer cover-up options, I went on Poshmark, and again, this was in the throes of my back injury where I was immobilized. Like, I couldn't move. When I had to go upstairs, I had to drag myself on hands and knees. When I had to go across the kitchen, I was on my knees pulling myself with my arms. So it wasn't a fun time. And when you have kids, you can't just not take care of them. So I was, you know, hauling myself up the shelves of the pantry to get something to eat and prepare that and get it on the table, and then go back and lay down in a semi-comfortable position, although there was no position that was free from pain in the first couple of days. And so in this space of actual pain, I engaged in the pain of desire, and at least that was a pain that I could fulfill or quench or what's the word? Ease, alleviate, soothe by buying something. And so that's what I did. I bought several things. And so that's the backstory for all these kind of slip-ups. So I then went on Poshmark and bought one of those mesh crochet kind of sweaters. I had one of these in college and I wore it to death. So again, I have proof of concept. It's kind of like the black dress that I ordered from that other kind of more sustainable small US made brand that incidentally still hasn't shipped. You know, now their estimated date is in July. So originally I thought I was going to see that in May. It's now been pushed back because, again, small business and they don't quite know when things are going to get there or when things are going to be available. Anyway, so I have proof of concept for these items that I have yet to really take out and about, but I bought a kind of mesh crochet sweater off of Poshmark. And then the next couple of things were purely Instagram ads that worked on me. And it brings back the thoughts of the times that I've commented on targeted advertising. I think the first time might have been in one of those videos of consumers things that make me mad. And it reminded me of that, and the comments I got, some of them were saying that they like the targeted ads because they show them things that they actually benefit from, they actually kind of need, that they actually want to buy and appreciate being alerted to. And I am still not there. I'm not appreciative that I was shown these things that I suddenly needed despite not needing them before. And, you know, I know there are circumstances where somebody might be shown something from these ads that is genuinely life-changing and helpful, and you know, that's not what these things are for me. But I was shown an ad for this thing called the string thing, And it's basically a way to use your old guitar strings is what it was for them. But for me, I go through viola strings much more quickly than guitar strings. And up till now, I've just been throwing them in the trash. But basically this string thing is a little sculpture that has holes in it. And so you wrap your used strings around the arms and legs and body, and it looks like this mummy covered in like little metal strings. And so, did I need it? No. It wasn't something that I didn't even know existed and had no, remote use for. Was I looking for a way to recycle my strings? Not actively. Every time I change them, I do think like it would be great to have a way to repurpose these, keep these out of landfill. Am I doing anything useful with them by putting them on this figure? No. Is it even solving my problem? I mean, I won't be sending them to landfill for as long as I can put them on this little stupid sculpture, but it's another object I now have in my house. And yeah, I fell for the Instagram targeted ad. I fell for it again when I was shown this concert black clothing by this company that was run by an orchestral musician, or is. I think they're still active, still in business. And there was this skirt, this beautiful skirt with a detail on the back. And I was fighting the pain of the back injury, engaging in the pain of desire, and feeling the relief, at least from that emotional pain through the purchase, while distracting from my physical pain and stillness and ailments and worry and stress about being able to play the concerts, and saying that I could play the concert, what if I couldn't, and let everybody down, all these kind of high tension emotional times. Again, not justifying it, not saying that it was acceptable to solve that problem by creating more problems or basically kind of undermining my own values, my own goals. But that's just the reality of what happened, and I'm not yet equipped enough to be able to deal with that level of adversity in terms of things that make me feel bad, things that make me feel despondent or stressed or in this place of pain. And I don't, there's no way to really train for this, I guess. You can have ways of coping that don't involve buying stuff, but each situation does feel kind of nuanced and different. And I guess the bottom line is I just wasn't prepared enough. I haven't practiced this long enough. I hadn't seen the light enough to be able to cling to that as I was sinking to the bottom of the pool. Like I couldn't see the light in my, once I'd sunk below a certain level, and I just kind of gave up. And I'm here to climb back on. And once again, I'm not trying to model this behavior for anybody out there on a no-buy year. I'm not claiming any success in this. And it does feel foolish even to profess that I'm starting a new no-buy, although that is kind of what I'm doing. I am going to try to do a firm no-buy July and just see where things go. And I might try to do at least 1 month of complete no-buy in terms of bringing material goods that I don't actually need into my life. And after that, we might go based on savings goals for my new why. And I'll get into that after I wrap up everything that was purchased in the month of June. The last thing that was purchased is something you might have guessed based on my recap from May. And yes, that is the Labubus.
Oh, no!
I actually have one up here on one of my bags, and I hesitate to move it into frame because I don't want to model that kind of behavior or that kind of influence or that kind of slip-up level from Project No Buy. But I have to be honest with you, with me, mostly with myself, and share where things are, share where things are at, despite making a point to do the reflection of why do I want these darned Labubus with you on this channel. I caved. I bought a box of them on StockX. So resale. And my kids and I are playing with them. We're making them a little house, and it is something that we kind of connect with, which is, it's kind of silly, right? Like I could make a point to connect with them with their other toys. It wasn't a need. It is fun, right? Again, I'm not going to lie, but was it something that I was trying not to buy and then bought anyway, or trying to at least wait for and still bought? Yes, and that's where we are. And I want to be in a place at some point where buying a box of Labubus doesn't make me happy, or doesn't bring me that temporary joy, or doesn't have enough power over me that it leads to making a purchase that I was trying not to make, if that makes sense. There were other kind of subtle factors in the month of June or end of May or, this time period that maybe led to feeling the impulse to spend money or to make a purchase that I didn't need, things that used to trigger me before. So going on a road trip, we spent some money there, we got tired. Again, that was kind of a trigger for me back in January. We bought a patio set, patio furniture. My husband wanted to buy it last year, but we decided to save some money and wait and bought it this year. Which, did we have more money? Objectively, yes, but we hadn't saved specifically for it. So it was kind of a drain on the monthly budget and kind of impaired our savings for that month. And so once again, when you're already kind of not saving, at least in my mind, maybe my girl math adult mind, my shopping lizard brain or whatever, once you're already spending that extent of money, you're already failing, it's just easier to slip up more, like you've already lost it. And so I just went and lost it some more. And so those were triggers that used to be more prevalent. And I do think that had I not experienced the back injury, I don't know that those would have gotten to me alone. But the combination of factors, the nuances of that kind of situation, the pain, the helplessness, the worry, the feeling that I might let people down, the having to, call other musicians to see if they could be backup if I had to pull out last minute. It was very stressful. It was a lot of juggling involved, a lot of kind of just stress and emotional distress and physical distress. And it's just a perfect storm of factors that led to making the worst possible decisions in terms of the integrity of my project. Ironically, there are some things that I did not buy, and when I share what these are, you might think me ridiculous. And indeed, the things that I don't buy are things that are arguably more justifiable to buy. So there were just a couple of things on my list here, but the first thing was a particular kind of sippy cup for a baby who's growing up and probably needs to stop having bottles. But we have other cups. And we've had other kids, and in the past, the other kids did not do so well with sippy cups, which is why we don't still have them, and eventually just transitioned to regular cups. And so there was a moment where I was thinking, does this baby need to have a particular cup to transition here, or do we just need to deal with a few days of pain and inconvenience and, the baby's suffering in the transition here without the aid of a special cup that they may or may not even like? And so I did not buy the cup, even though it was something we contemplated. And the other thing was a lumbar support pillow, which it's still possible that I may eventually buy. But it just depends on how things are when I go back to work in September, whether I actually feel like I would benefit from having the lumbar support pillow, which again, I just had a back injury. Some of you out there may be thinking, why wouldn't you buy the lumbar support pillow and just use that whenever you sit down? Clearly you're prone to back injuries, or, this would benefit you physically. This is not something that's in the parameters of a no buy. Some of you might be saying that it is. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or thoughts in your head. But of all the things, the silly things that I bought the pants, the skirt, the string thing, the crochet top, and the Labubus. It was all in all a haul of like $1,000 right there. The pants being $400 of that, the Labubus being nearly $200 of that. And so, I could have, instead of spending $1,000, just spent $100 if I stuck to the actual replacement purchases, which were sunscreen and mascara and a couple of meals out. I go through usually everything that I spent on in the past month involving meals out and replacements. So about $100 was spent on eating out between work services, mascara, again, replacing the ones that I don't like that I tried as far as cheaper dupes. I talked about that already in video. And the sunscreen, again, we just needed more for the upcoming summer season. So I could have spent $100 instead of $1,000 and put that money into savings towards my new goal, which now that I have a new job, or the same job but with a salary, I should, in theory, have about an extra $10,000 in my bank account, in my paychecks. And my goal is to get an electric instrument. I have shared this on this channel before. And now my why is to put that $10,000 away into a savings account so that next summer we can take a trip to the violin shop, the electric violin shop, and just get the full outfit. And I don't know if it's going to cost $10,000, but I want to have enough available to get the electric instrument, whatever amplifier or speaker I'm going to need, whatever pickup if that doesn't come on the instrument, and a carbon fiber bow. And so I want to have that $10,000 just sitting there, saved in addition to a fully funded emergency fund and saving for other things, whatever, education, retirement, etc. So that is my new why. And the why that might actually help the most is the thing to buy, right? The electric instrument. And I have mixed feelings about that, where I don't know that I should have a material good or an object like that as my prize for not buying, given that it's still kind of in the same realms. However, it is different in that it is an expansion of my career possibilities, or the things that I like to do for work and for fun. And so it's not that it's a money-making tool per se, but it is a more nuanced purchase, or a more nuanced thing to save for than just a thing, a material good, an expensive piece of clothing or designer handbag or something that doesn't really expand my things that I can do, if that makes sense. So that is my new why. I'm going to quickly run through the other metrics that I usually go through in these videos, just so that I don't neglect them completely. I didn't keep track of screen time, although anecdotally, I do feel much more in control of this than I did in the past. I've been watching a lot less YouTube videos, and there are very few select creators that I like to watch commentary and content from. Again, the Labubu craze kind of brought this back to a head for me in terms of mindlessly consuming that kind of content was definitely feeding that feeling of wanting and the pain of wanting, and pushing me towards relieving that pain through a purchase. Again, just through having consumed the videos by conscious creators on Labubus, which it wasn't just one video, it was like 5 or 6 videos from different people talking about these Labubus, because it's a societal phenomenon and is probably popular enough that it gets clicks. So, the algorithm was pushing it hard. And then I would get shorts of people unboxing them, and it's just addictive to watch, and then feeding that desire of wanting to fulfill it, have to scratch that itch kind of thing. And so it reinvigorated this desire in me to separate myself from that type of influence, or, it was a wake-up call that I'm not quite out of those woods yet. And so I have since then, this is several weeks ago, I've since then been doing a lot better in terms of not consuming that much content and kind of really curating what I watch. We are also doing more this summer so far. So we're getting out more, we're doing more activities, spending more money in some cases on going to places or getting ice cream or, things like that, hanging out with friends. But that is the kind of activity or spending or whatever, energy allocation that I do want to replace shopping with and consuming that kind of content with. So things are moving in the right direction since all of the fails and the slip-ups. Books that I read, Hooked and Indistractable, the yellow ones by Nira Yal. Affluenza, I finished that book. And I said I was going to save it when I first started it earlier this year because I wanted to do some videos related to it, but I now feel like I don't really have to, because basically the take-home message was that this has been a problem. Affluenza, the disease where we want to buy stuff, want to shop, consumerism, has been around for 20 years, 40 years, decades. The book was, I want to say 2000 or something like that, 2001. I don't know. I need to maybe look at the date and put it up here. But this has been a long-standing thing, right? The book was talking about all the symptoms of affluenza. They're all the same today. We've seen content about it. I've made content about it. And so it's just part of the fabric of our society these days. And so I don't necessarily think I need to do a dedicated video on it, but I did finish it. I made a little more progress on In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. That's my nightstand book, so I haven't made a priority to actually finish it despite starting it way earlier in the year. But I am enjoying it. Doppelganger by Naomi KLEIN. I consumed this in audiobook form and really enjoyed it. I already talked about it in a previous video, or earlier in this video actually. I've been talking for so long, it feels like it must have been another video. And then No Logo by Naomi KLEIN, which I'm going to save for another day. I don't know if I should tell you this.
And I very nearly didn't. I almost censored this part of the video, but then I was thinking about how I don't really believe in censorship unless it's something that directly harms other people. And you can educate me in the comments below on how sharing that I read a certain book by a certain person is harmful. Yeah, just let me know, because I still haven't figured that out. I'm not educated in that way, so I'd love for you to enlighten me.
But I did also listen on the road trip in my car, our family car, to JD Vance's audiobook, Hillbilly Elegy. And again, it was something that I had seen in bookstores before I knew who JD Vance was. And after hearing some comments from people I work with, and one person I work with has a wife who grew up in Appalachia and said something about how she really hated the book because of how he depicted it, I got curious. And it's not because this is not a message of support for the current administration or JD Vance or anything like that. But again, if you've been here for a while, you may have gotten the vibes that I am very proactive in collecting knowledge and try to keep the balance of getting knowledge and perspectives from as many sides as possible. You might not have that vibe. That might be pretentious to say, you know, if you've seen my videos, you might know this about me. No, I'll tell you this about me. I am open to consuming things from multiple different views, and I am open to starting something and stopping it too, if it's, you know, abhorrent to me. I started reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Beep by Mark Manson and had to stop because it just seemed so banal and like ridiculous. Like I could not finish that book. Anyway, so we did get through the whole audiobook, and I'm not going to comment on it here, but that was something that I technically read this month. Standout favorites in music or other media. I was algorithmically served some videos of Charles Yang, and he plays violin and sings, and I'll link one up here because it's just really cool stuff. He's really good. Viola pop covers, I had not been able to do any. And the past few videos, even on this channel, might be all from the Ravel Quartet because I haven't had the chance to record the next one. And honestly, I might just keep it that way. This might just be the Ravel Quartet channel. I don't know. The next one on my list to do is Mendelssohn, A minor, I think. We'll see if I manage to do that in time for July's crop of videos. If not, you can go listen to the Mendelssohn A minor quartet anyway. There you go. There's a classical music recommendation. But yes, I do hope to get back to the Viola pop covers ASAP. It was supposed to be part of my summer project, and I've been kind of put way behind on that due to the back injury. Anyway, I think that's enough rambling from me today. I am going to try no buy July in terms of doing a focused effort to not buy things that I don't need for the month of July. And I do hope that July's recap will be much shorter than this one and much more positive than this one. If you're joining me for no buy July, let me know. If you did better than me in no buy June, let me know that too. I'm sure most of you have. So I would love to hear your success stories and receive some motivation and some inspiration, something to aspire to in terms of efforts to break free from this consumerist society and systems that we work within. All right, with that, I will say bye for now and see you in the next one.